Judges 9. The title is The Disintegration of a God-Forsaking Nation. And that's about as formal as we'll get today. The rest of it's going to be basically verse by verse. Judges chapter 9. Stick your finger there and then go to Isaiah. Judges 9, but we'll start in Isaiah 28. Isaiah 28, verse 17. Isaiah 28, 17. Judgment also will I lay to the line, and righteousness to the plummet. That is God saying how he's going to judge. And the hell shall sweep away the refuge of lies, and the water shall overflow the hiding place. Your covenant with death shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell shall not stand. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, then ye shall be trodden down by it. God's saying it doesn't matter how much effort you went to unite yourself with wicked forces, I'm still going to crush them. It doesn't matter if you make an agreement with the devil himself and hell. God still gets retribution. Righteousness always prevails. That's what the boys in this chapter are about to learn. Even though they've sided with Abimelech, the wicked man who's come in and started his ruling by murdering 70 of his brothers. God's still going to come out on top. Man always has a sense of he wants fair to come through for him. Now, sometimes we're not so concerned about fair for somebody else. But God's idea of fair is fair from a righteous standpoint. Judges 9, verse 22. When Abimelech had reigned 3 years over Israel. So for 3 years, that's a long time. This wickedness has been prevailing. A mean, wicked ruler, a murderer really, who made up a throne to sit on, has been lording it over God's heritage. Verse 23. Then God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem. And the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech, that the cruelty done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood be laid upon Abimelech their brother, which slew them, and upon the men of Shechem, which aided him in killing of his brethren. Just a side note, I pointed that out in Sunday school today, is look there at verse 24. This is the first time this relationship has not been referred to as a half-brother, as a son of the concubine. Now it's simply brother. We've got a world who loves to capitalize on things that are minor and don't matter. If you're in a family, you don't have a half family. It's a family where it's not a family. There's no such thing as a step family. Literally, that was his stepbrother, not a whole brother. The Bible here just calls it a brother. God has a little different view of things than we do. Furthermore, Eve, before she had any children, was called the mother of all living. You know what was living? Animals. She was mothering the animals. That is, taking care of them. You take care of something, you're its mother or father. So throw out the world's idea of titles. God says, no, there's not any halves, there's no partials. You're doing it or you're not. In or you're out. Okay, that's verse 25. I got off on a whole nother sermon. Verse 25. And the men of Shechem set liars in wait for him in the top of the mountains, and they robbed all that came along that way by them. And it was told to Abimelech, enter the next cruel leader. And Gaal, the son of Ebed, came with his brethren and went over to Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. So now you've got two wicked men. This is almost like reading the annals of Assyria and Babylon. It's two pagan forces who were at war against each other. You know why? Because God doesn't like either one of them. He's going to put them in a room and let them kill each other. Basically, that's what's going to happen. The problem is there's some of Israel mixed up in the middle of this. Go back, Judges 9, verse 16. The prophecy was this. Judges 9:16. Now therefore, if ye have done truly and sincerely, in that you have made Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done unto him according to the deserving of his hands, for my father fought for you, and adventured his life far, and delivered you out of the hand of Midian, and ye are risen up against my father's house this day, and have slain his sons 70 persons upon one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his maidservant, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother. If ye have dealt truly and sincerely with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. There's a formula in that verse. This is a computer language formula. See the first word, if. The next word that has to follow an if is than. And then the result is let. If, then, let. That's a computer language formula. If this, then do that, and let this outcome. Here's the thing. He says, if you did right, then do this. Be happy, rejoice. If you do the right thing, you do rejoice. And it's a righteous rejoicing. But you know, the world rejoices too, but they rejoice in wickedness. Their joy is short-lived and hollow. That's what we're going to learn in this. He says, if you've done right, then get happy about it. He says, and not only that, I hope your leader is happy too. Now, obviously they have not done right. Because when we get through this story this morning, we find out nobody's happy. Nobody's rejoicing in nobody. They're all killing each other. So obviously they had done wrong by murdering these men. Judges 9, look at verse 23. We'll just start verse by verse. Verse 23. Then God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem, and the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. An evil spirit of jealousy. This is treachery and discord. This breaks out between Abimelech and the Shechemites. These were the men who had made him king. They endorsed his act of murder at the beginning. And now all of a sudden, the tables have turned. Could they couldn't have foreseen 3 years ago that the man they set up, the murderer, was going to turn against them. That's the way it is. I find many people that do this thing. They cheat on their husband or wife and go marry a cheater and then get surprised when the cheating starts all over again. What did you expect? Okay, when you make a criminal the king, what do you think's going to happen? He's not suddenly going to become righteous. No, he's going to further his wickedness. 1 Samuel 16, verse 14. Because of this, God does some drastic things. He said in our verse that God sent an evil spirit. People don't realize that God does this, but he does. If they'd just read their Bible, they'd see it. Amen. 1 Samuel 16, verse 14. But the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. Where'd that evil spirit come from? I know the modernist will say this. He'll say, God lifted his hand of protection and allowed. No, it says from. That is, God directed it. God said, hey, you evil spirit, stick him. And that's what happened. Verse 15. And Saul's servant said unto him, behold now, an evil spirit from God troubleth thee. They knew it. We've just got more stupid with time. 1 Samuel 18. 1 Samuel 18, verse 9. And Saul eyed David from that day forward. You see what happens with this evil spirit. The evil spirit does this. It makes you jealous and envious of everything around you. You look through history and you'll find that's kings went crazy many times. And it was usually because they were scared somebody was going to take something that belonged to them. Didn't matter how rich or how wealthy, how many lands they owned, they were always scared somebody's going to get something. And it causes them to go insane. Look at it in verse 10, 1 Samuel 18:10.
Do you think that was jealousy or just fear?
No, it's eyeing him from that day forward. That's probably watching him because he's jealous. The previous comment is this: Saul's slain his 1,000 and David his 10,000s. Okay, which was wrong. That was an exaggeration. But Saul says, oh, the people think more of him than they do of me. How dare they? I'm going to wait for a chance. So his first chance is this: if you want to marry my daughter, here's the way you can do it. Go kill 100 Philistines and bring me proof. I'm giving you the clean version. and so David goes out there, and Saul expects him to be killed in the process. And he's not killed. He brings back double. 1 Samuel 18, verse 10. And it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house. Now, hold on right there. An evil spirit can cause you to prophesy. Doesn't mean the prophecy's any good. But did you know that the devil is more biblical than most Christians? He knows that Bible better than you ever thought of knowing it. Therefore, if he wants his servants to prophesy and look like an angel of light, that's the way he'll appear. And if you don't have the Spirit of God in you to interpret the Word of God, the devil will do it for you. That's what Saul's doing. And David played with his hand, as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence twice. Not a nice guy. But that's all at the urging of an evil spirit from God. When God's done, it ain't pretty. God says, go get him. That's the sign that God's done with a nation, an individual, or a family, is he sicks the devil on them. 1 Kings 22. 1 Kings 22:22. Here, Jehoshaphat and Ahab are having a little conference. In heaven, there's a conference going on too. And the Lord said unto him, wherewith? And he said, I will go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, thou shalt persuade him, and prevail also. Go forth, do so. This is a heaven in the heavenlies. There's a conference going on. God's asking the angelic host up there, how are we going to convince this person so we get this outcome? God was interested in a specific outcome. He was going to orchestrate things in order to get it. The way he found he was going to do it was this: an evil spirit's going to go down there and embed itself in these supposed prophets and give a false message. He says, a lie? Oh, they'll buy a lie. They love liars. Many men make lies their refuge. That's a poor substitute for a good foundation. Look at it in verse 23, 1 Kings 22:23. Now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of all thy prophets, and the Lord hath spoken evil concerning thee. That's a sign of God you don't want to see.
Amen.
But it's a real one. Isaiah 19, verse 2. Isaiah 19:2. We didn't even make it to point 1. This is going to be a while. Isaiah 19:2. And I will set the Egyptians against who? The Egyptians. God says, I'm going to make this team self-implode. That's what God does to a nation when he's done with it. He's going to do that to every nation who had a hand against Israel. God says they'll not go unpunished. I don't care how right or wrong you think Israel is, I would not go against them.
Amen.
There's something way bigger than their military. God. He says in our verse, the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight every one against his brother, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. That is God saying, when I get ready to destroy these people, I can just make them start destroying themselves. That's what's going to happen with Abimelech. The rebel team that's taken over and killed the 70 boys now is turning on their own kin. Their own folks are mad at each other. This is nothing new. Look at, you're in Judges. Go back to chapter 7, Judges 7. This was Gideon. Gideon was here a God-picked judge, and he's going to free Israel from their bondage. As he's going through and obeying the things that God's told him to do, the steps God's told him to take, this is how God controls the outcome of it. Judges 7:21. And they stood every man in his place round about the camp, and all the host ran and cried and fled. That is, when they heard Gideon and his men up on the mountain shouting the sword of the Lord and of Gideon and busting their pitchers and showing their light, they got scared and they didn't know what to do. They start running. Verse 22. And the 300 blew the trumpets, and the Lord set every man's sword against his fellow, even throughout all the host. And the host fled to Bethshean and Zerath and the border of Abel-Meholah unto Tabrith. That is, the Midians are down there, and they hear all this thing going on, this commotion up in the mountains, and it feels like, they're getting attacked by a billion different divisions, and they turn and they're ready to fight, but they don't know who they're fighting. And they're all fighting each other and killing each other. That's the way God does it. He says, I don't want my boys to get bloody. I'll just change their mind, and they can see their neighbor as their foe. That's what's going on with Abimelech. His own family has decided we don't like him anymore. Yeah, we were behind him and helped him murder his half-brothers. Now we're going to do the same to him. The problem is they've made a dangerous killer powerful. Now the murder has increased in volume. Abimelech has not gotten more nice. He's not suddenly got religion. He's going to be more wicked. And so they're going to have to find someone who's even more wicked than the more wicked man they got. It's bad news. Judges 9, look at verse 24. Judges 9:24. He says that the cruelty done to the 70 sons of Jerubbabel might come, and their blood be laid upon Abimelech their brother, which slew them, and upon the men of Shechem, which aided him in the killing of his brethren. That is, it's not just one person to blame. God's laying the blame at all of them as though they were the killer because they enabled it. They paved the way. What do they call that? An accomplice or something to a crime. So if you're the getaway driver for the bank robbery, you get in the pen just like the rest of them that were doing the robbing. Didn't matter if you were just driving the car. It's the same. If somebody gets murdered during the midst of it, you're going to go down for murder too because you were the car driver. Accomplice right here. God says they helped him. They paved the way for him to be a murderer. Therefore, I consider them one too. 1 Kings 2. There is something about justice and fairness from God's point of view that is natural for a man to crave. We want justice. If your eyes are half open, you as a American, as a Christian, would look and say, I want to see God set the table straight on Clinton. That's a desire for justice to prevail. That's just natural. Guess what? God's going to do it. Maybe not in your time frame, but he's going to do it. There is such thing as justice. The world calls it yin and yang. That's baloney and more baloney. But there is such thing as righteous retribution. 1 Kings 2, verse 32. The Lord shall return his blood upon his own head, who fell upon 2 men more righteous and better than he, and slew them with sword. My father David not knowing thereof, to wit, Abner the son of Ner, captain of the host of Israel, and Amasa the son of Jether, captain of the host of Judah. Here, God's getting retribution after the death of David for men who did something wicked. He says, I'm going to return the blood right back on their head. We're going to accuse them of murder because they were guilty. That's exactly what Abner did, or who are we talking about? Abimelech. Abimelech did. He started out by killing 70 men. I'd say he's got a couple of bucket loads full of blood to be dumped on his head, and God's going to do it. Look at it, Psalm 7. Psalm 7, verse 16. Psalm 7:16. His mischief shall return upon his own head, and his violent dealing shall come down upon his own pate. Put any politician's name in there you want. It's a fact. God says justice will prevail. Righteousness is going to come out on top. You might not see it in your lifetime, but eventually it will come true. Matthew chapter 23. Matthew 23. Everybody should cringe when I say Matthew 23. This is one of Jesus' most hellfire and brimstone preaching messages. Matthew 23, verse 35. Jesus preaching here. That upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias the son of Berechiah, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. God says there's more to blame than just the actual person who did it. It's also the people who agree with what was done. These people weren't alive when that was happening. The blood of Abel? That's Cain. Cain was the one responsible for that. He said, no, you're party to it. I'm going to knock out the whole party. God gets retribution. Esther chapter 9. Esther 9, verse 25. Esther 9:25. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. God gets retribution. There is fair and there is just. I know sometimes it feels like there's not, but there will be. Hang on, God comes out on top. Don't listen to the devil's lie. The devil will say his boys are winning, but he ain't seen the last inning. The Shechemites quickly found out that while the one they sought to control, the murderer they put on the throne, suddenly was more vicious than they had imagined. What are they going to do about it? In the space of 3 years, what started as a band of brothers now disintegrates into mob rule and survival of the fittest, and who's the more wicked and who's the more powerful. It's not a happy family anymore. Remember, the prophecy was this: if you've done right, then let's all have rejoicing. Nobody's rejoicing. Matter of fact, there's so much murder, there's blood and weeping. The opposite of rejoicing. Judges 9:25. Judges 9:25. And the men of Shechem set liars in wait for him at the top of the mountains, and they robbed all that came along that way by them. And it was told to Abimelech. So they say Abimelech's out. Maybe he's doing some training or something. He's out of town. He's going to come back, and we know he's got to come back across this mountain over here. What we'll do is we'll ambush him. We'll set some liars in wait up there on the mountain and wait until he falls into our trap, and then we'll take him out. But while we're here, there's other people that just walk by too. Let's make some money. And so they become a band of thieves. That's what's going to be the next administration. Whew. Great guys. The liars in wait. I just like the way that says. They're waiting to lie. No, that's not what it means. But the word liar, that's what they were. They were all a bunch of liars. Right. Here it just means they were waiting in ambush. However, that's true both ways. Now, these men were the same caliber of crew that Abimelech had to begin with. Remember how the Bible put it? He said they were vain and light persons. That's the crew that's here. They're selfish, they're cruel, and they're waiting for a chance to come out on top. Proverbs 1, verse 10. Proverbs 1:10. He says, "My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not." Used to, that would mean if a gang comes along and asks you to join. If somebody you don't have to go out of your house to be enticed by sinners nowadays. It's as close as the next screen you can see. The advertisement that's pumped in. Sinners enticing you. If they say, "Come with us, let us lay wait for blood," isn't that exactly what was going on? They were waiting for him. They were in ambush. "Let us lurk privately for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them up alive as the grave, and whole as those that go down to the pit." Verse 16. "For their feet run to evil and make haste to shed blood." You know what? God gets justice. If a man sheds blood, by that man shall blood be shed. And he's going to do it. Verse 19. "So are the ways of everyone that is greedy of gain." Uh-oh. See, we would have read that so far and said, that's not me. But are you greedy of gain? You want something you don't have. Just like you were lying in wait for blood, wanting to murder somebody. "Which taketh away the life of the owners thereof." Heavy duty. Look at it, verse 26. Not Proverbs. Judges 9:26. Judges 9:26. Up steps the next great hero, and I'm saying that facetiously. Judges 9:26. "And Gaul, the son of Ebed, came with his brethren." This is a family feud. It's one family against the next. Now, it's always been that way. It's jungle life. One tribe against the next tribe. Remember, Israel was called 12 tribes of Israel. It's tribal. And here, it's one family is going to fight for the next one, and they've got a grudge, the Hatfield and McCoy thing. That's what's going on here. Verse 26. "And Gaul the son of Ebed came with his brethren, and went over unto Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their confidence in him." When evil deeds are the order of the day, there's an abundance of candidates for the job. Always will be. The men of Shechem actually put their confidence in Gaul as their leader. Gall, you know what that is? Bitter. They want a bitter man because they're bitter. The leader is not a reflection of who they want to be. The leader is a reflection of who they really are. They'll pick someone just like them. Proverbs 25. Proverbs 25, verse 19.
You okay?
Yeah,
You
get a
got
napkin.
it?
Proverbs 25, verse 19. He says, confidence in an unfaithful man in time of trouble is like a broken tooth and a foot out of joint. That is, if you can't depend on somebody, but yet you're trying to depend on them, guess what? It won't work out too well. Matter of fact, it's going to be painful. And it was in our story. It's not just Abimelech and his crew that's going to suffer. It's everybody. It's the town people. It's everyone who was involved in making him and his replacement leaders. So they put confidence in him. You're not supposed to put confidence in the flesh regardless of how pretty or strong the flesh may appear. It's not worthy of your confidence. Jeremiah 2, verse 37.
That's what frustrates me when people want Trump to be president. They almost said he was a guy. Trump will solve all our problems.
Nope. Yeah, it doesn't matter who you pick. If God's not put confidence in them, don't you do it. Here's the problem. Jeremiah 2, verse 37. Jeremiah 2:37. Yea, thou shalt go forth from him, and thine hands upon thy head, for the Lord hath rejected thy confidences, and thou shalt not prosper in them. It does you no good to get all confident in something unless God is. If God rejects it and you're confident in it, that's a big fail. And according to the Bible, it's going to be painful. Judges 9, verse 27. Judges 9:27. I'm trying to hurry this. We'll be done in just a minute, I think. Well, maybe a few minutes. Judges 9:27. And they went out into the field and gathered their vineyards and trode the grapes and made merry and went into the house of their God and did eat and drink and cursed Abimelech. This was the man they liked just 3 years ago. Now they're cursing him. Sounds like the news media, doesn't it?
Yes.
They're pushing a candidate. And before the term is up, they're cursing the candidate. Wait a minute. Whose side are you on? A service of joy and thanksgiving is always required at the end of the harvest. That is, they've gathered the grapes. Pagan or Israel, righteous. There was something they had that modern America and the world has lost. The ability to think someone beside you is responsible for what you benefit from. Isn't this something? You can learn a lesson from the heathen here. After the harvest, they thank their phony God. A lot of Christians don't do that. In Israel, after the harvest, they were required to have a feast to God because he's the one who made it possible. Now here they put their confidence in the wrong one, but you see where it all happens. It happens after they're saying someone else was responsible for benefiting me. Just too bad they found the wrong one. They went to their God, lowercase g. Look at it in verse 22. He said, when Abimelech had reigned, how long? 3 years. That's an important number. 3. God let this mess go on for 3 years. What was going on for 3 years, nobody else knew about. He was slowly turning up the heat on these frogs. until it was going to come to a boil. Look at Deuteronomy 26, Deuteronomy 26:12. Deuteronomy 26:12. The end of 3 years, something happens. The water begins to boil. Deuteronomy 26, verse 12. When thou hast made an end of tithing all the tithes of thine increase, when? The 3rd year. Now there's 3 types of tithes. There's an annual one, and then there's a personal one, and there is a 3rd year tithe. Something's supposed to happen at the end of the 3rd year one. This is kind of a time stamp, a culmination tithe to prove that you're thankful to God. You know what happened at the end of their 3 years? They're offering junk to a phony God. That makes God mad. He's going to do something about it. Look at it in Deuteronomy 26:15. Look down for thy holy habitation from heaven, and bless thy people Israel, and the land which thou hast given us, as thou swearest unto our fathers, and the land that floweth with milk and honey. Now, that's what's supposed to happen. But what happens if they do it in reverse? They're not thanking God. It's been 3 years. He's not receiving what he's due. You know what he's going to do? Just the opposite of all this. He's going to bless it. He's not going to bless it. He's going to blast it. There's going to be a disintegration of this nation. 1 Kings 18. 1 Kings 18:1. 1 Kings 18:1. And it came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, Go, show thyself to Ahab. Let's have a fight. And I will send rain upon the earth. Now, that sounds like a blessing, doesn't it? But not if you were a prophet of Baal. You're about to lose your head. That's where God moves the end of the 3rd year there. Look at it in 1 Kings 22:2. 1 Kings 22:2. And it came to pass in the 3rd year that Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, came down to the king of Israel. Ecumenical get together that's going to end in total disaster. And that's where God sends that evil spirit we talked about earlier. It happened at the end of the 3rd year. Well, this is where our boy is about to self-implode. Abimelech and his band are going down, and there's another one just as bad or worse than he. And the prophecy of the parable of the figs, or the trees, is going to come to pass. The Shechemites transferred their offerings not to God, but to Baal-Beroth. That was their god at the time. And God saw that, and he took it personal. Well, he should have. It was personal. It should have gone to the real God, the God of Israel. But yet they're giving it to a phony God. Well, when God, it's just the way God does is he destroys evil. If you're going to line up with evil, you can go get destroyed with it. And that's what's happening in our story. I don't know how much more of this I can give you. In verse 27, notice what was going on at the time of this. Judges 9:27. Says they went out into the fields and gathered their vineyards and trode the grapes and made merry and went into the house of their God and did eat and drink. You know, that's a bad place to start. Gluttony and drunkards. Those two are connected all the way through the Bible. Usually a person is both. If they're going to be a glutton, they're also going to be a drunkard. They've not learned self-control. You know why? The only thing that a drunkard can control is the ability to come up with money for more alcohol. They've always got money for that. There's something about it that they've lost control, but the alcohol sure has control. It demands more and more, and they become the servant to it. Here, these wicked men have imbibed with alcohol and gluttony. No restraints. We'll get whatever we want. Matter of fact, they're going to pursue it, but they ain't going to get it. It's at a holiday. You know what's going on in America? In my day, since I've been alive, every holiday has turned into a drinking fest. Name a holiday. It doesn't matter what it is.
Even baby showers.
Yeah, baby showers. I've never been to those, but I don't think no babies need showers. You don't need a shower but once a year. Everything is about alcohol. Why? You know why? There's a name for it. They know what the name for it is. It's called spirits. It's an evil spirit. Our passage began with the evil spirit from the Lord. Sometimes God says, I'm done with a nation or a country. And if you don't come out from among them, you get swept up in it. We're finding in our chapter, we're not through. We'll get another installment of this maybe next time. We'll find that God's going to knock out 2 of the enemies of Israel before we're done. It seems like pain and suffering all the way through, but God's got in mind something great for his nation. Just like he does with us. He's going to destroy the wickedness around us, and we may feel a little pain in the process, but it's for a great cause. One day we'll come out on top.